Hello again, this is Sky, and I want to go a little bit deeper into some of the things that I touched on the first video. So this video is going to be about the change of dimensions that we're currently experiencing on this planet, as we are moving from a very high dimension, a very low dimension, very dense dimension into a higher dimension. So we're currently in the change of dimensions. And that means that it is like going from a denser aggregate state to a higher aggregate state. So I always compare this to the aggregate state of water. You have a dense aggregate state, which is ice. You go to a higher frequency, so to speak, a higher aggregate state, which is water. And then you go still higher, which is vapor. And you can also put snow somewhere in the middle. So you have an additional one. So it's going from very dense to higher and higher and more flexible and interactive. So this means that we're going into a whole set of new rules when we're going to a higher dimension, as we're currently experiencing. Different rules apply, and as we are changing dimensions, many people are experiencing physical symptoms also, and also it's affecting them psychologically. And you can compare this with altitude sickness, for example. If you're moving up higher, you might get dizzy or nauseous. And as we're in this change of dimension, the higher frequencies that are coming on the planet now are affecting the body and the psyche, because it's a state that we're not used to. So a lot of people are experiencing pains, headaches, pressure in the head, sounds in the ear. It's just a lot of physical symptoms that they cannot really explain where they're coming from. And when they go to the doctor, they can't really find anything. So it's very possible that the origin of these symptoms is this change in frequency that we're currently experiencing. It also affects the psyche. So as we're moving to a higher frequency, the psyche reacts in a way that a lot of things that are stored there, and that can even go to things that have been stored there for longer than our current lives have been. So, meaning that it's outside of our existence right now, that are too heavy to exist in this frequency, so they come up and become very visible, are experienced in order for them to be cleared. So that means that a lot of people go through very intense emotional states right now. And that is actually a good thing. It's important to let that be, because if the dirt comes out, it's not good to put it back in. It's good to let it be flushed out. And during the process, what's also very important is that there is a very simple rule that we sorry need to be very aware of, that the root of everything at all that we see, that we experience, everything that is our reality, the root of everything is spiritual. It's not material, it's spiritual. And that is a truth that is currently not regarded on this earth, which makes us run into a lot of obstacles in what we're doing, because we don't really see the true origin of things, and we're treating the symptoms without knowing the cause, or without treating the cause. So that means it's very important to connect with the spiritual. It's very important to connect with the spiritual realms, and basically to connect with the divine. And I said that before, that the divine, for me, I call it the divine because the word God has been so misused that it is not at all anymore now that what it actually means. And it's very far from being the spirited guy in the clouds that judges people and says, oh, you're good, you can go to heaven, and you're bad, you go to hell. And it's this beautiful, loving, healing frequency that keeps everything in harmony when you tune into it. And that is the origin of all creation. So in the shift in dimensions, it becomes more and more important to connect with this divine source, to take time for ourselves, to take time in silence, and to really feel. Because as we're moving higher in this frequency, a lot of things that we haven't really felt are going to be felt more, and we are going to feel and see a lot of things that we haven't seen before, or not to that extent. Because in this lower frequency, it's a little bit like we are dumbed down, or we are sedated and on auto control. We don't really have contact, or we're not really in touch with ourselves, and we're not really in touch with the environment. We're not really in touch with creation and the powers that move it. You can only see a very, very small excerpt of what there is. And that often leads to people believing that, okay, well, you are born, and then you grow up, you go to school, you get an education, you do a work, you start a family, you have kids, you have a house, a car, and then eventually you go into retirement, and then you die, and that's it. And that could not be further from the truth. There's so much out there, and it's incredibly exciting. And I can just say that my life has been getting more exciting with every year. There's more and more to see and experience, and the world just gets bigger and bigger and bigger. But a lot of people just stop somewhere, and they kind of resign, and they think, okay, well, that's it. Of course, that also takes some courage, because if you go further, you go into maybe something that is unknown, or something that is not something that you're used to. But I'm telling you, it's getting more and more beautiful. And so there is so much more to who you are than what is imminent in what you see, or what you have been taught, or even what you have experienced up until now. Because most people identify with the body, they identify with their character, with their personality, with their family, and everything that is around them. And there's much, much more to that picture. And as we're going into these higher frequencies, just as we're going from ice to water or vapor in aggregate states, that means the particles become more interactive. So basically, your interaction with everything that surrounds you becomes much more immediate, and the pace is quickened. So you have more of an impact of everything that you are and of your environment. You can feel it much more than you did before, and you can also feel the reaction quicker. You can feel the impact quicker. So basically, your interaction with everything around you becomes quicker. And that's also why there is so much going on in the planet right now, because it's like everything is boiling. Basically, what's happening is that the whole structure of a reality is in chaos because it's being reorganized. It's coming down, basically. And we're caught in this tornado, and the safest way to get through it is to connect with the source. Like you're in the center of it, in the eye. Of course, there's a lot of techniques on how to do that. I'm just going to start by saying, take time for yourself. Go out into nature. And if you are not doing this already, start meditating. It is an incredibly powerful way to have all the dust inside of you settle and really feel where your direction is, where your guidance is, where your next step is. And that can be very easy, and it doesn't need to be long. You don't need to spend hours of meditation every day. But it's very important to do it on a regular basis, even if you just take a few minutes. Just close your eyes and feel yourself and breathe. And basically, as we're moving into this higher dimensions, as I said, our communication with everything around us is getting quicker and more immediate. And that also means that much more communication is possible. We see so little of what's out there. And you can basically communicate with everything. And as you communicate with people, energies, objects, yourself, your higher self, it becomes this interaction that gets very alive and it gets its own dynamic. And in this communication, you will find out that you know that people react to you when you communicate. You say something and the other person says something back, and then this dynamic unfolds. And the same thing happens with objects. So basically that means that we can influence objects. Oops, my battery is low. I am sorry, I need to fix this. Sorry about that. Yeah, so it ultimately means that in this communication that we have with these objects, through our minds, we can influence the objects. We can even move them. And we can influence situations. But also here it's very, very important to have this contact to the divine, which basically is the glue that holds everything together and that also nourishes everything and everybody and unites everything. Because what we are is a part of everything else, and everything else is a part of who we are. And that means whatever we do to someone else is something that we do to ourselves. The action is always reciprocal. And if we don't understand that, and we think, oh, I can influence objects, I can move them and all this kind of thing, and we're inflating our ego with it, that is not doing us any service whatsoever. It's basically doing us harm. Because it's not about our ego, it's about the whole. And anything that we do, as we recognize the powers that flow through us and everyone else, basically, it's very important to do everything in a spirit of service. Because as we serve others, so do we serve ourselves, and the other way around. And if we do something because we want to be higher than someone or better than someone or get more out of a situation, and that will come back much quicker now than it ever did before. So it's always good to, what I always do is I often go inside of myself and I'm asking myself, okay, why do I want to do this? What's my motivation? What's behind it? And is it something that is beneficial to everyone? Or is it something that I want only for my own benefit? And of course that goes the other way around too. There's a lot of people who think, oh, I'm such an altruistic person and I want my family to be well, so I'm doing everything for my family, but I'm not taking care of myself because there's much more important. That is just as wrong. I mean, this is just as harmful. Yeah, you cannot apply the terms wrong or right because that means that there's judgment involved. And as you go up to the divine, there is really no judgment. It's just what it is, and then the soul learns its lessons as it evolves. So you will understand on the long run what is doing you harm and what is bringing you to a space where you are happy and fulfilled and free. Yeah, so it's very important to take care of ourselves and to be well ourselves, because otherwise what we give to others is not coming out of fullness. It's not coming out of healing energy. It's coming out of basically emptiness. And the energy that we give something with always affects the person that we're giving it to. So you would only want to give something out of a beautiful energy, right? For it to be good for that person. Yeah. Thinking, is there anything else about the change of dimensions? Oh, yeah. Another thing also that I mentioned in the other video is that the higher we go in dimensions, the more everything becomes one. So right now we're in a plane where there is opposites. There is light and dark, hot and cold, good and bad. And, we tend to place ourselves on the good side and they say, point a finger at the bad and say, oh, that's so bad. And look at this person, how can they do that? And that basically means negating a part of ourselves that we haven't really dealt with. Because the more we deal with our shadows, the more we integrate them, the less we point them out in a judgmental spirit in others. Because we understand that the soul that is experiencing this or doing this is currently maybe in a state where it is harming itself, ultimately. And that it cannot harm us unless we are in this low resonance, in this low frequency, and we have a resonance to this, that we fall into the trap, so to speak. And the higher you go in the dimensions, the more you see that everything is one. And when you're up in a higher frequency, you become more and more serene. Your balance is getting stronger and stronger, and you're not so thrown off by it. You become much more of an observer. That means you see everything that's going on around you and you observe it rather than getting caught up in all the turmoil. And that is very important right now, because as all these things are going on in the world, if we get caught up in the turmoil and the pain and the suffering, that means that we contribute to it, because we add our own frequency to these low frequencies that are already there. And that, of course, does not mean that we just stand by and go, oh, so, this is that, and this is that, and sort of, I don't care. That's not it at all. But as you're inspired to act, the way that you act is not with an energy of pain and suffering, but with an energy of healing. That is a completely different place that you come from. And I can just give this example that I once heard from, I think it was Byron Katie, who used to always be so upset when she picked up the trash that people left in the environment and think, oh, how can they do this? This is so awful, and don't they know about nature? And eventually she got to a point where she just picked up the trash without having all these feelings. She just was inspired and to pick it up. So she was walking through a beautiful environment. She saw some trash. She picked it up because she knew it wasn't supposed to be there. So she just picked it up and threw it in the bin or whatever. And without these horrible emotions. So when we are in a space of neutrality or serenity and balance, that doesn't mean that we don't act, but the way that we act is different. And it causes much less suffering to ourselves. Or no suffering, basically, eventually. And yeah. So when we get to a higher frequency, these two opposite move so close together that we see that they're one, and that one is bringing out the other. So the good is bringing out the bad, and the bad is bringing out the good. And then we understand that everything is in a divine harmony, the way that it is. And when we understand that, the suffering stops, the pain stops. And our own energy that we have when we move to such a place contributes to the serenity in the world, to the peace in the world. And basically, because our own individual energy always interacts with the collective, and the collective always interacts with our own energy, as we as individuals heal and get to this place of serenity, this energy is transformative to our environment. So basically, in this way, we also start transforming the dark into the light by looking at it and seeing the light and reminding it that it comes from the light. And it's like when Jesus saw a sick person and he looked at it, or him or her, and said, you were healthy. Basically what he did was he reminded that person that this of its his or her perfection in this divine harmony. And that is what we do when we get to that place. Yeah, this is just a short summary. And more soon. Bye.